was just announced that WNBA TV ratings are down more than 50% since Caitlin Clark's injury. And it was also reported that the Indiana Fever television viewership is also down over 53%. Now, I know a lot of us were expecting some sort of dip since Caitlin Clark has been out with injury, but I don't think all of us were expecting the entire viewership of the entire WNBA.
The WNBA has received a harsh reality check. This entire situation feels like an endless Netflix buffer without Caitlin Clark. The playoff ratings didn't simply decline, after all. They completely collapsed. It's similar to your phone dying at midnight at 1%. Not even fans are watching. They're either dozing off or switching the station more quickly than a terrible TV program. Are they no longer there, or are they merely watching pickleball? In any case, there is more drama in this playoff debacle than in a bizarre reunion from a reality program.
Guys, today, is there any chance that the WNBA, that Kathy Engelbert saw some of the ratings that I'm about to show you now and said, hey, Indiana Fever, can you do us a favor? Can you do us a solid? Can you just tease a Caitlin Clark return, kind of boost these up a little bit? Can you just dangle a Caitlin Clark return in front of the fans' faces, try to boost these ratings up a little bit? There was one matchup that this league can consistently rely on to produce massive viewership numbers.
The WNBA was expected to have its big year during this season. You know, the moment when they take center stage and prove to everyone that they are truly competitive. Rather, it seems as though the entire league has been wiped out, like they've fallen headfirst into a huge pail of nacho cheese. They are then attempting to pretend that everything was planned.
A shocker. Imagine my surprise. Just imagine my surprise when Uncle KC found out that the WNBA is struggling to maintain their ratings without Caitlin Clark. To make matters worse, and this is something I have definitely noticed in the last 3 or 4 weeks, especially since the All-Star game, the WNBA seems to be struggling to maintain interest.
Here, let's just be truthful with one another. It's been a gorgeous, disastrous trash fire of a WNBA season. Instead of watching great basketball, you were treated to a ton of injuries and foul calls that made it seem like the referees were wearing broken glasses. Additionally, keep in mind that a commissioner who acts as though player health is merely a suggestion. Since Caitlin Clark's ankles evidently became public property, and the defenders treated her like a human crash test dummy. If you were watching for entertainment, you most likely turned off the TV the moment she began spending more time on the bench than actually playing.
Think about Caitlin Clark. The operative word that comes to my mind is gratitude. There's an incredible level of gratitude that should be accorded to this young lady with what she did for the sport.
How was the attendance for Team USA in the Olympics? What would it have been like if Caitlin Clark was playing on that team? Remember the first game? Look at this right here. National broadcast viewership. What are we talking about here? 1,000, what is that? 1.219? Is that the number? And the game afterwards got 485,000. So the Fever in their game against the Minnesota Lynx was 1.219 million.
When the most thrilling aspect of this season has been fans questioning whether the league will simply implode before the playoffs even conclude, you know things are truly terrible. This is the spoiler. It's barely surviving. By a tiny strip of duct tape that practically shouts, please don't notice how terrible this is, to be exact.
NBA's black superstars should thank their lucky stars for the record ratings Caitlin Clark is detonating, even if new fans are mostly white fans. It doesn't matter what color eyeballs are. But the other day, I must admit, it hit me like Katie Bell Henderson telling me that's enough. I told myself it's not racist for me to like Caitlin.
What about those officiating calls this season? Since we're on the subject of negative things, I swear, the referees appear to have been taken from a mall food court during lunchtime. As they try to choose a braised chicken, one of them is most likely still munching on a piece of pepperoni. Another appears to have mistakenly signed up to officiate a roller derby. The consistency is essentially in the middle of a fortune cookie and a magic 8-ball. A huge shove is meaningless in a single game. Someone gets kicked out of the game the very next time they sneeze too forcefully. This season, if these referees had a stat line, it would be turnovers 0, terrible calls on every single possession.
The WNBA has a problem, and that problem is Caitlin Clark not playing in WNBA games. Now, what all does this affect? The ratings are plummeting. Guys, there's ratings for a couple of these games that are eye-popping.
Let's move on to the injuries. As the WNBA this season appears to be more of an orthopedic surgeon's Christmas wish list than a basketball league. Caitlin Clark has been recuperating far longer than she has been playing, primarily because she is treated like she owes money by the defenders. It seems like a brand new episode of How Hard Can We Smash Caitlin every time she tries to drive to the hoop until the referee finally notices. And it turns out that the answer is more difficult than you may imagine. However, Clark isn't the only person suffering on this end of the world of basketball. The athlete they featured on posters as the face of the future was Sophie Cunningham, who was meant to be the bright spot. She will now miss the full season.
Gone. Done.
She is essentially waving from the injury list, as though she were the lead in Sophie's Torn Something, a brand new television program. To be honest, you could almost hear the commissioner's office exhale in relief. We have one less star player to properly market, which is great. If Sophie's wound wasn't enough, Angel Reese uttered the following: "You know what? I'm leaving." She left in the middle of the season. In most sports, that would be considered stunning, but in the WNBA, it seems more like a critique of the league. Since players are dropping like flies on a sweltering July afternoon, and your commissioner is unable to maintain order when the referees are trying out for clown school, why wouldn't someone opt to quit? Reese most likely reasoned that she would prefer to use Instagram than run the risk of getting tackled during another game, as if she were trying out for the NFL.
That's not a trend that the WNBA is excited about. That's a trend that Kathy Engelbert would say, hey, Fever, hey, Lynn Dunn, hey, Kelly, hey, Amber, can you guys start dangling that Caitlin Clark return like you used to do? You know, before Caitlin Clark gave a statement and you guys were hands off. Can you guys, just string them along a little bit more? We want to get these ratings back up. We want to get these numbers.
The thing is this. You do realize that none of this is taking place in a vacuum? For years, the WNBA has pleaded with the public to give them attention, to treat them as more than an afterthought, and to take them seriously. However, the league itself isn't benefiting. It appears that the commissioner has a severe allergy to player protection. For example, the idea of safeguarding stars and enforcing standards is simply too radical. Imagine, if you will, if the NBA let LeBron James to be body checked on each and every possession without generating a foul call. The league would disintegrate more quickly than a crappy camping chair. However, it's just another Tuesday night in the WNBA. Speaking of collapse, let's discuss the ratings, since this is where the humor truly comes through. In fact, the numbers increased early in the season when Caitlin Clark was still playing and healthy. Curious to see if all the excitement was genuine, they tuned in. Those were the best days before Clark's accident. Suddenly, ESPN was acting as like they were interested. Sports Center featured highlights, and Twitter users pretended to understand what a pick and roll was. However, the ratings fell more quickly after she left than Angel Reese was interested in seeing the season through to the end. The WNBA seems to have finally realized what happens when your refereeing strategy is to simply let her get struck in the face while your entire marketing strategy is focused on a single player. Now, some supporters could counter that fouls are a part of the game and that injuries happen during this difficult time. Come on, though, this is more than simply bad luck. It is truly poor leadership. The commissioner has been acting like a stand-in teacher and has lost all authority over the class. The league only intensified its disregard for issues rather than addressing them. Top athletes leaving the game. Hey, it's all right. Games are rendered unwatchable by referees. The fans will stay, so don't worry. They did, spoiler alert.
At Indiana against the Chicago Sky, right after that game, they opened an investigation once again into the fans where they found nothing, but the damage had already been done at that point. If some of these things happen just one time here and there, or there's one certain media personality who's just always saying these kind of things, then whatever. I feel like fans as a whole can be like, okay, whatever, this person is just a hater. But this is something that has happened over and over and over again. And over time, it starts chipping away at how much you're going to actually care and want to support an organization if they continue to do things like that.
And the play.
So, the players who are...
As a result, the players who are still in good health are essentially made to participate in games that resemble professional wrestling and rugby more than basketball. You can't always tell if you're watching WWE SummerSlam or a playoff game. You simply anticipate that someone will always grab a steel chair. The commissioner is still giving interviews